When I talk to people about being a faithful and flourishing school, how to become a high impact Christian school, the one topic that I bring up that probably concerns people the most or they get the most uncomfortable with is the one that I want to talk about in this video. And it's one that it creates this kind of internal conflict for a lot of people because something in it feels a little bit wrong at first when they hear it. And here's the thing. High impact Christian schools, they know their mission, but they also know their mission field. They know the audience that they are best positioned to serve, and they're honest about that. So the question that I pose for schools that are really striving to refine what they do to pursue Christ-centered excellence at a new level is this question: whom are we called and best positioned to serve? Now, I know that in the scriptures, people will point to a passage like Paul saying, I've become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. Certainly that there's great wisdom in that scripture, and I'm not trying to deny that at all. Also remember, though, that a Christian school itself it's not a biblically prescribed organization. It's a human-made institution, and it can serve good and noble purposes, and it can be give honor to God and be a blessing to other people. But it's a different kind of thing. And the example that I often give is I use the healthcare example. If you are a cardiologist, is it wrong for you to not take a patient who's experiencing foot pain? Or if a patient suspects that they may have cancer, as a cardiologist, is it wrong for you to recommend that patient go to a different doctor? Of course not. A cardiologist specializes in caring for people that have heart disease or cardiovascular challenges or needs. There's a certain scope of expertise for a cardiologist versus a podiatrist versus an oncologist versus a general practitioner. And someone would say, well, schools, maybe they're kind of like the general practitioner and they serve all people's needs or general needs. Well, that's not actually true. A general practitioner doesn't typically do heart surgery or whenever someone is diagnosed with cancer or they have signs that may lead to cancer, they send them to a specialist. And so a general practitioner actually focuses on specific people and specific kinds of needs as well. And I would suggest that that's a really important way of thinking about our schools. Your school cannot serve every possible student with Christ-centered excellence. I believe that. I've never seen a school of any type, a Christian school or other type of school, that I believe can provide the best possible education for any student from any background in any situation in any circumstance. And so what that means then is it means that we have to be honest about what we can do well and what we can't do well. Of course, you can always improve. If there's an audience that you want to serve and you don't think you're well positioned, you can try to get better at that. But also it's important for a Christian school to acknowledge where they are right now and where they want to grow into in the future. And that is this tough question. I encourage every school to take the time to ask and answer this question with depth, to engage as many people as possible in your community, to have the board and faculty and staff and sponsoring church bodies and leadership and everyone involved in this question. Who is it that we're really well positioned to serve? And you may develop a kind of persona, a description of the type of family or student that you're really well positioned to serve. And along the way, you will come to acknowledge that there are just certain students that you're not serving very well now. And if a certain group of students wanted to come, you couldn't serve them. Now, this could relate to students with different educational backgrounds, different learning challenges. It can relate to students with coming from different cultural backgrounds. It can come to people who are in different places spiritually. It can relate to a wide array of things. And again, I'm not saying that as a Christian school you should somehow be discriminatory or you should turn away everyone. I'm just saying that the high impact schools know who they are, They know what they do well. They know who they serve well, and they focus on doing that. And when and if they want to try to serve a different population of student, or they admit or enroll or recruit students that maybe don't fit that description, these schools take that seriously, and they earn the right to serve that student. They learn to become what's necessary to serve that student well. So this is the question again that I think is the hardest for people, especially sometimes small Christian schools that are struggling for enrollment, and they're candidly saying, well, I'll take any student that will pay tuition and walk through that front door, and we're going to give them a good Christ-centered education. That's a reality for some Christian schools. I realize that's a situation. There are other Christian schools that are in communities and places where they have a very long waiting list, and they're actually packed. They've turned closets into classrooms just to serve more students. I know a Christian school in Colorado that I visited that has had that particular joy and challenge, and another one in Las Vegas. And there's schools all over the country that have that. Regardless, whether you have a waiting list or you are struggling to keep the doors open because of limited interest, defining who you are, being clear about your mission, being clear about your distinctions, and then also being clear about the audiences that you think and you really honestly can serve well. You do all of those. That develops a kind of blueprint for continuous improvement in your school. It informs the kind of curriculum that you're going to develop, how you deliver that curriculum, the kinds of teachers that you hire. It impacts the way that you recruit, the way that you promote your school. It gets into a lot of different things. So I want to leave it there for now. But I would encourage you to think about that. In the Faithful and Flourishing book, in my third chapter, the question that I ask in that chapter is, whom are we called to serve? And at the end, I offer a series of 5 questions to ask. And some of these questions are actually related to other videos that I've created and that are up that you can check out. But I'm just going to finish with these questions for you to think about. The first one is, it can sometimes be controversial to humbly recognize that your school may not be the best fit for every student. With that in mind, to what extent does your school embrace this idea, and how does that impact the way that you recruit and serve students? The second question is, review the 4 types of Christian schools listed in the chapter. So that's actually in another video if you want to check that out. Which type of school best described to you today? The third one is, given your school's unique strengths and features, which students are you best positioned to serve? And which students does your school struggle to serve well? Another question that you can ask that's sort of leading into the future is, do you see unmet needs or opportunities in your community regarding serving a particular population of students? And how well equipped are you to serve one or more of those populations? And what would it take to be prepared to serve that population? And then the last question is, to what extent is there agreement or disagreement regarding answers to these questions in your school? What would it take to build a shared understanding and a consensus about this? Again, this one seems a little bit counterintuitive at times, because people think, well, I'm turning people away, and that just feels wrong. But it's not really about that. You're a school, and you're providing a Christ-centered education. It's an educational service. And in the process of doing that, we have to be honest that the type of education that we provide, the way that we provide it, all of that, it's going to work for some families and students and not for others. And we need to be able to design our schools accordingly and to be open and honest about that. So that's all I have for you for today. God's blessings to you.